All right, welcome everyone to this afternoon's panel discussion on enterprise training. I've got a great group of people up here for you guys. Quick show of hands. How many people is this your first EWTS? Wow. How many people have been to EWTS before? All right, so maybe about 70-30. Cool. Well, welcome to the panel, and welcome to Dallas. My name is Lou Pushelberg. I run a education software development company called CircuitStream. So very privileged to have Marco, Randy, Raj, and Rick up here with me today. To kick things off, I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves.
Cool. Thanks, Lou. Hey, everybody. I'm Marco. How's everybody doing, by the way? Good. Awesome. I'm straight from Orlando, Florida. I work for Holiday and Club Vacations, and yes, I do work for timeshare. I know that's a word that everybody goes, so hopefully by the time you walk out of here today, you'll see that I'm not a bad guy. Actually, we have a fantastic company, a company that's anchored on innovation. So hopefully I'll get to share a little bit about that with you all today, and then maybe learn from my colleagues and from you all as well. So thank you, Lou.
I'm Randy Nunez. I work in a group called Emerging Technology and Innovation. And the emerging technology side, we investigate some of the emerging technologies, and I head the extended reality area. And what we're trying to do is understand the trends and technologies that are in extended reality and how we can leverage them for use at Ford.
Very good, Randy. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Raj Tiwari. My daytime job is I work with the Global Service Owner Advanced Technologies for Johnson & Johnson. And I have, when I'm not busy with the Johnson & Johnson, I have a lot of industry affiliations. I am the Forbes Technical Council member and the Forbes author as well. I am the worldwide IEEE, which is the world's largest technical association. I'm the worldwide chair for the Future Direction Digital Reality Committee. I'm also affiliated with the government closely, ACT, American Council of Technologies. I'm chairing the industry side of it, where we are helping government to adopt the new technologies, primarily like AI, blockchain, and the AR/VR. So that's a little bit about me.
Good afternoon, folks. Rick Smith. I work for JLG. JLG is a manufacturer of construction equipment. We put people at heights, 180 feet in the air. So I'm in charge of global product training. I have training groups all around the world, and we're always looking for ways to keep people safe.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. So real quick housekeeping before we dive in. This session is all about creating value for you guys, our audience. So if you have any questions throughout the panel, like, don't be shy. This is all about you guys. Like, please just like raise your hand, and it'll make our conversation flow better and my job a little easier. So yeah, just feel free to raise your hand, and we can kind of take questions as you guys as you have them. What we're going to do in terms of format is we're going to start kind of general to kind of get the big picture for some of the initiatives and also industry challenges that the four gentlemen up here are seeing in their industries. And then from this kind of big picture, broad stroke, we'll try to get more specific into use cases, data, implementations, return, more specific into the challenges, and try to get more specific as the discussion kind of winds down. So with that, I'm going to direct my first question, and Marco or Rick, if maybe either if you guys want to speak to this one. My first question is just around some of the corporate objectives and goals of your organization, and I'm going to try to frame kind of technology and some of the work that you guys are doing kind of under that umbrella.
I think, Rick, you should go first since I got to introduce myself.
All right. So primary objectives for my organization, again, looking at it from the global training perspective of a manufacturing company. Again, we put people at heights. People call our machines cherry pickers. How many folks have ever been in or around a JLG? All right, thank you.
Oh.
So machines, we put people at height. We're a regulated industry. And as a manufacturer, we're required to provide operator training tools to our dealers and the end users. So the objective of my company, one of my goals was to make our training the best in the world. So we are the industry leader, and my mission was to make our training the best out there. So whatever it took to make our training the best, give the best training tools to our customers, and ensure that the folks operating our equipment, survive and are safely done with their work.
Go for it, Marco.
Oh, so we're going round robin this way.
You got it, Marco.
Nice shot. Okay. So at Holiday Inn Club Vacations, we have a very simple purpose, and that is we strengthen families. That's not just a saying, that's embedded into everything that we do. Absolutely everything. So when it came down to leaders, you got to think about our business. Most people think timeshare is we serve people cocktails, check them into their room. Yes, that is the customer experience, but there's so much behind the scenes that most people don't know. We have finance individuals that are constantly making sure that we're doing the right things with the money and reporting to the agencies the way we need to. We have IT people running our technology. We have HR people taking care of the people. And across the entire schema of the company, we have so many different leaders that work towards making that customer journey happen, but they've never actually seen it happen for themselves. So the unique goal that my organization has been given is to use AR, VR, MR, and all existing technologies to try to find a way to make it relevant to teach our leaders about how our customer journey works at every step of the way. From the time they learn about us to the time they purchase our product, stay with us, and even how we service them the other 50 weeks out of the year. So I think we have a very compelling story of how we've been able to do that, but it all goes back to every decision that we make, every training program we put together has the same purpose in mind, and that is to strengthen families, no matter what.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks, Marco. So I will I'll open up a question to the other two, kind of inverting that question and maybe looking at challenges, or not necessarily problems, but like challenges that you're trying to overcome. Again, from a kind of a general perspective, Raj and Randy, what are the three biggest industry challenges that you are facing?
Sure. So yeah, Lou and everyone, like if you say not only the challenges, whenever I say the challenges, I see all the time the opportunities in the challenges. So if you look at from the industry perspective, like the top one is the challenges and the opportunity as well at the same time is the digital transformation we are talking about, right? The digital transformation, we are talking about the automation, and we are all live in the machine era, right? So as I said, like this is a challenge. At the same time, it's a great opportunity as well. So that is one challenge which I say. The second one is the aging population, right? A lot of the great experts, which is globally, they are going out of the workforce, right? The baby boomers. And if you look at the globally, so they have developed the legacy. They have developed the the expertise in one area for many, many years. So they are the super master and the SME in that area going out of the workforce. So how we can retain that great knowledge and give back to our generation to come or the workforce, and how they can leverage that particular talent which they have developed over a period of time. That is a challenge number two. And so third one is, again, like challenge and the opportunity is the globalization. There is nothing called like, oh, I just want to operate in this particular city on the country. I think most of you, how many of you has the global office, like operate in more than one country? How many of you? I think most of us, right? So like the globalization comes with challenges, but at the same time, it also comes with a lot of great opportunity, right? Yes. If one of the particular product is not doing well in one particular country, you are making profit from the other country. So the survival rate is pretty higher when we talk about the globalization. And in the second phase, I just want to highlight what are the challenges and the opportunity, and then we can talk about how we can overcome with that, right? So I don't want to club the opinion in this question. I will just take, but just to summarize is the digital transformation, global aging population, and the globalization. That's what 3 things I see. There are a couple of more, like the standardization as well, but you asked for 3. So I'm going to just stick to 3, but otherwise the 4th, if you have asked, is any of these emerging technologies. You talk about the AR, VR primarily, or AI, or blockchain. There is no standards in the industry, but I will hold on to the 4th one. That's on a very high level from my side.
Okay. Well, I think the number one from a training concept is the retiring workforce. And I know there's a number of industries here as well as automotive. There's a huge group, and I'm included in that group, that's going to be retiring soon. And how do you capture that tacit knowledge that's going out the door? Kind of dovetailing in that is how do you attract and retain talent? So I think, if I'm not correct, millennials are now the number 1 demographic in the workforce. And they expect to use technology in their daily lives and at work as well. And so they're digital natives. And so how do you bring people into a manufacturing environment where there's been studies where people say it's dirty, it's dangerous, those kind of things. And you're going to have to do that with technology. Probably the second one is, because I'm in a more emerging area, when we're done with our proof of concept, it's not like they can just go to an organization and say, I want some of those, I want that hardware, I want that software. So having some internal standards as well as, I guess, some more broad standards in the industry would be a great help. And I think number 3 is actually finding the right people who can help you bring your thoughts and your ideas to reality. Finding those key people in a plant or in marketing, sales, or in PD who have and share the same vision. I'm on the IT side, and I depend on the business to really drive the technology, because as IT, we are servants of the business. And it's really the business that's going to drive it, and we're just there to try to enable them to do their jobs better.
Thank you. So, I mean, just summarizing, the first one is, I think, around digital transformation. Like Raj, you had mentioned that, and Randy, you had kind of touched on that around a new workforce coming in, expecting certain like digital kind of natives and digital environment. And then also this idea around, and Rick, you were explaining this to me earlier when we were sitting down, like you have maybe a period of growth that your company goes through, and that kind of puts some gates around a period in time where we're hiring quickly, and maybe that is 30, 40, whatever, 50 years ago, whatever it is, and now you have this big cohort of people that are retiring. So how do you capture that expert knowledge? Just as a quick poll, how many people here have like also experienced a similar challenge with that baby boomer retiring kind of shift? Okay, and how about the first one in terms of like a new workforce, digital transformation, millennials like kind of shifting to digital? Okay, so we probably captured like 95% of the audience with either one of those sets. Awesome, so I'll open this one up to any of the gentlemen up here, but if one of you could speak to, given some of the goals and opportunities, but also challenges, maybe an implementation or some type of use case where it's either solving the problem or solving the challenge or kind of capitalizing on the goal, just kind of elaborate and maybe share what that is.
So I normally don't call it training. I call it guided instructions. And the reason I do that is you sort of get the instructions while you're doing the work, at least in an AR concept. So one of the areas is when you're doing workforce training, especially when you're doing things like new model programs. Believe it or not, there's a lot of changes that go into a vehicle, even if it's the same vehicle and it's just a model upgrade. And so how do you get that workforce skilled up more quickly? And one thing you can leverage VR for example, is you don't have even a prototype vehicle yet. But if you have the CAD data, you can start getting them immersed in a virtual reality environment before you even build a vehicle. And then as you do that, what's the possibility of being able to then leverage augmented reality to give them work instructions while they're doing the work. And especially with smart eyewear, where a lot of the operations require at least one, but usually two hands. Some of the other options like a television screen, a stationary, a tablet or smartphone probably don't fit. So when you're looking at smart eyewear, one of the things you want to push back on your customer is, why do you need this? Why can't you do it with some current technology that we have? And for me, the smart eyewear piece is, do you need hands-free? And then on the VR side, looking at areas of either high consequence or high value. So for example, how do you train people for a medical emergency? You can cut people's arms and let them bleed. That's probably not a good idea. But if you could do something like a 360 video and have it captured more and give them a deeper experience than you would just say with a web-based programming. For example, people will say, wow, that didn't take very long. While I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for them to go through the training, for them, they're immersed. The other thing is, they can't do anything else. You can't take a page or text. You can't be glancing at another website. You can't look at your phone. You're immersed in the training. And on the high value side, sometimes we have multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment in a plant. We can't build a training center for a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that might vary greatly amongst the different plants. Well, what if you had a virtual reality simulator and you had the CAD data? You could build that multi-million-dollar piece of equipment relatively quickly and give them a virtual reality experience and get them a real look and feel, very close. We had a couple people that tried to lean against a rail of a stair and almost fell over. And you'd be surprised, if you get the right motivation, you can get some of those older workers, some of the pre-retiree workers involved in technology.
So we know a company well called Also VR, which you reminded me of, which does surgical VR training, and they've basically measured and can prove that a surgeon needs to do a certain number of reps. Like I think it's like literally 1,000 surgeries, big or small, before their probability of making a mistake just drops dramatically. So Oso's whole data point is, hey, if we could get surgeons through 500 or 600 reps in VR or 900, that they're closer to that threshold of competency. It's interesting to your point too around having a $2 or $3 or $4 million machine that maybe 4 or 5, 10 years ago, maybe the military could have the budget to buy a headset and the hardware, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you can get some of the hardware, $400, $1,000. It's cheap enough where you could simulate that environment for a much more efficient cost. Any other, do you guys want to speak to implementations or use cases?
I have one I'd like to bring up, and that, so again, our machines put people at height. We developed a virtual reality training, operator training simulator that, the use case is pretty obvious. I think that we'd rather teach these folks how to operate these machines on the ground in a simulated and safe environment, and then before you put them up in the machine. And the machines are not inexpensive either. They're expensive machines and sometimes difficult to get to use for hands-on training. So we developed our VR simulator. We piloted it for a couple of years, and we're now actually selling those units as part of our business. That I think it's a very successful use case here, where it solves the problem of operator proficiency. It measures operator proficiency. It gives them a score. It knows where they're looking. It's a very objective measure of operator performance in a variety of environments. So our use case was real easy to make, and our sim solves that hands-on training issue nicely.
I remember you explaining to me that for the sim, like if you have, if one of your customers has that asset, like multi-million-dollar asset sitting idle, that's just such an ineffective use of time.
It is. One of the issues our customers bring up that hampers training is they need a machine sitting there just to do training, where now they can use the sim, and it's much more cost effective than renting or buying a machine to train on.
And you also have a kind of an interesting structure, right? As far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but JLG's process is that you manufacture the equipment and then that gets sold to a separate company, which then leases the equipment to the end customer.
Right, that's our business model. That's our primary, the way JLGs make it in the market is we sell to dealers, and the dealers are generally rental houses that rent our equipment. Most of the contractors don't own the gear, a lot of them do, but the vast majority of our equipment is rented through a rental markets.
So it's interesting though, because the training actually flows through to two sets of customers almost.
Absolutely, yeah. The dealers, we do a lot of service training for dealers. Operator training is obviously end users, folks that are out there using our machines to do work.
Cool. And then Marco, I know that a lot of your training and content that you've built is distributed to thousands of people. I think it was 5,000 people. Do you want to talk about some of your use cases, implementations?
Absolutely. So this gentleman, you guys did a fantastic job of kind of painting the picture of how we can solve for the retiring generation that has a lot of great skills. So I'd like to actually go off of a similar case study, but different context. So we have a lot of general maintenance technicians, and they mostly do the things that other people don't like to do, like fix toilets. It happens quite often. As we're bringing newer people into the workforce, and it's becoming harder and harder, by the way, with the unemployment being so low, and people don't wake up in the morning and say, oh gosh, I just graduated high school, I want to go fix toilets. It's not happening, right? So it's really trying to attract that talent. But once we attract them over to our resorts, if we're trying to teach them how to fix a toilet, you would think that that's easy to do, right? Not so much, right? Because sometimes there's different types of configurations of toilets that we buy. There's different type of plumbing, depending on where we happen to be. There's certain permits that we might need to clear where we can't even do plumbing ourselves. So rather than trying to go in there and break a toilet and then trying to teach them how to fix it, we're able to use virtual reality to bring us into an environment where we can send a headset out to one of those remote areas, and through telecommunication, we're able to actually assist them as they're going in and practicing how to fix a broken toilet in a virtual environment. Moreover, we can also use AR for them to be able to do inspections, because a lot of our general maintenance technicians have to be able to go in and look at our villas and inspect what's wrong, right? So what we'll do is that we built this AR overlay where they can go around either on a tablet or headset and go and spot different things in a simulated environment in a real villa, right? So it's not like we have to create a separate, $2.5 million facility like Rick was talking about, right? You can't do that. But we're able to kind of bring that AR environment into a room where they're now inspecting an actual room model that we have, and we've been able to simulate different things around that they kind of have to spot, and then they have to tell us how they would fix, or the kind of process they would need to follow, or the system they would need to go in to kind of record a ticket. So we sort of build these scenarios around them, around real life. Because one of the biggest challenges, not to go back to your last question, but one of the biggest challenges that we face is that most people see this as a gimmick. They think you're doing VR, you're doing AR, MR, that's all a gimmick. It doesn't work, it's just a game. You're wasting your money. So that's the biggest challenge we've had to overcome in our industry and in our company specifically. So by being able to bring it as close to real life as we can, mixing both what's there and what's not really there, we've been very successful at building a very good case study for it.
Cool. So take a quick pause there. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask? Come on, yeah. Go ahead.
My question is, I guess, kind of simplistic when it comes to training itself, right? You were mentioning about the toilets and such, right? There's nothing really that replaces it by the fact of being able to touch and feel it, obviously, right? My question, I think, would be challenging torquing a bolt, screw, right? If the person is doing it virtually, right, they may wind up over-torquing a bolt or doing some. How do you meet up with those kind of challenges?
So I'll just quickly repeat the question for the back of the room. So the question is, if you're doing training on like some physical, like a piece of equipment or something physical that you get that sensory kind of input from being hands-on and getting the feeling of torquing a bolt or something, how do you basically capture that same feeling in a virtual environment?
It's a very good question.
That's really hard today.
Yes.
So there is a level of haptic response that you can get, for example, when you're in virtual reality. The controllers today are able to vibrate to give you some sense of that. And you could be very clever, and you could even equip some of that equipment with some haptic feedback, the actual wrench, if you either partner with a hardware provider or try to do it yourself. I think, though, as mentioned, you can get a lot through just generic muscle memory and things like that. And with AR, you can actually use it on a real toilet.
Yeah.
And if you integrate it with IoT and sensorize it, you can get the actual torque information as you're doing the work and get direct feedback that tells you when to stop.
And we're working towards that. We're not that far yet, but absolutely going in that direction.
I'm in manufacturing, and we have our production lines. I produce beer. Corona Modelo.
Love your beer.
That's one of the challenges I'm having deploying some of this technology from a standpoint. Real simple, if it's documentation, if it's training, but when you're getting to the point of actually fixing something, right? Very dangerous equipment that can be had, right? So I've gone as far as documenting like torque specifications, certain aspects from the vendor or the provider of that manufacturing device or machine to make sure you get it correct. Right? But I guess the dangers behind that, even though it's augmented or virtual, there's still a little bit of that risk that that new guy that you meet or that onboarding guy that you're training might overcompensate or maybe undercompensate, that later on the next person that comes in might explode kind of thing. And that's the caution, the risk that I'm kind of facing right now to try to understand the best way. And you're saying, yes, sensors and such, but still there's that unknown factor, I can call it, that I'm kind of challenged with.
I would jump in there for a second. And some of the things, from a training perspective, you need to pick and choose what skills you're going to try to use VR or AR for. Like torquing a wrench or torquing a bolt, they would need to. That's a skill that you would practice beforehand. I think that one would do well to be hands-on.
And I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible.
Oh, you bet, you
Smart,
bet.
not hard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And evolving technology and such.
All right.
Those are challenges that
Yeah, we'll have to catch up. I spent years at Anheuser-Busch in charge of maintenance training, so I can help you with the beer maintenance.
Just to add to the complexity, the manufacturing environment is still okay. When you're talking about like one of the use cases which we have, it is training the surgeons, right? So like the manufacturing environment, you're talking the bolt one more time, nothing gonna happen. But if you're gonna be taking some kind of the measurement some kind of the misguided way when the surgeon is doing the hard surgery, done with it, right? So like now, as you know, like the technology is advancing and going to the next level, that like our panelists were saying about the haptic gloves, that's a one way of it, right? And then AI, not artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, right? Embedded with the IoT and with the AI. So like there are the vendors which talks about even the angle. If the surgeon is doing the surgery and the equipment angle is not correct, forget about the bolt, but even the angle is not correct, it is going to be giving you end of the training, giving you the rating, saying that, hey, your retina movement, your focus was not there. You didn't hold it that the syringe or something like in the right angle. So that so we are reaching there. There are the ways. It's a very important to go with the great partner. Now, like every day, like 5 vendors knock the door saying that, okay, we are the experts into the XR space. But are they really? They're not. When the client and the implementer, they are both learning together, it's a bad combination, very bad combination. So it is very, very important to choose a right partner. That's what like from the IEEE head, I'm working on a 15 standards in the industry for 9 industry. Because that's the standard plays a key role, because it's not me and you, the perception that I know and I did it rightly, but when the standard says it has to do in a certain way, that is the key, I believe. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it seems like just adding to that, like it's really good to self-recognize too where you're at on the spectrum. Like I know from our perspective, we've seen people who have fully sensorized equipment and factories, and that lends a different set of capabilities, and the opposite end of the spectrum, and that kind of also puts your technology, be it VR, AR, other type of technology, somewhere in that range. So there was also a question over here, and just a quick note, if you guys want some free beer at the after party, this kind of a beer party, so there you go. Blue suit, front row. I'm just teasing you. Please go ahead.
Scott Elliott, CNS. So we talked about cost, right? And you guys talked about building a brick and mortar environment to do training in, and you said, well, it could be cheaper to build it in a VR or AR environment. And so I believe it's Marco. I like the toilet analogy because, I'm out trying to cost what it takes to build these environments. I'm in a very high consequence, super expensive industry. I can only afford to do it once and do it right. But the toilet thing, how do you decide when it's really worth the money to build the virtual or AR training environment? How do you decide when, damaging an actual porcelain toilet may be the cheaper option than building a toilet in VR?
Sounds very good. That's a fantastic question. So one of the things that I wanted to add is on our end, we work with probably a lot more limited development funds than some of the larger companies that are into manufacturing, into medical and things like that. So for us, it is a very targeted decision that we had to make. We go back to the learning basics, Bloom's taxonomy, right? So are we looking to just simply relay information? Because if we are, maybe a simple video tutorial or a job aid that they can read somewhere on a knowledge base might be good enough, right? But when it comes to the application of the skill, I want to come back to the question that you asked about how do you learn how to turn the wrench? VR doesn't do that. We teach them at a more basic level with an instructor that will go in and say, okay, this is the proper way to use this equipment, right? And for us, it's very simple. We don't have very advanced tools. You're talking about a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench, pretty much. And then duct tape every now and then, but you didn't hear that from me. So the decision for us comes about feasibility, right? I can teach you how to fix a cheap toilet that I can buy, I can keep breaking. But what I may not be able to teach you is what it feels like to actually, or see what it would look like when you're trying to work with that toilet with running water, right? Now, that could happen if a toilet actually broke in one of our villas, because that's my opportunity for one of my more seasoned general maintenance technicians to take somebody and say, hey, let's go look for that broken toilet. Yes, we got it, let's go do it, right? But the chances of that happening, we come to find, based on trends, is very low. The rate at which toilets break, and that's just one example of many things that we do. So instead, what that virtual environment allows us to do is make sure that our people are equipped and ready for those type of situations. Because what may happen, and this is very real, that it happens at times, is that we may go and renovate an entire unit. And normally, because of permits, when we're renovating a unit, we can't bring one of our guys in there to train while that unit's being renovated by construction crews. But if we can go in there and build a very quick VR solution for that, and we do have a dedicated team on board in my company that can do a solution like that very quickly, right? We already have the equipment, which we use Oculus Go, it costs $200, right? We have the team that we're already paying that's on payroll that's already developing other things. So for us, it's a very low cost, very fast solution. We also use an agile method, so we're not sitting there and spending months and months of development. Normally, like if we're developing that one small simulation, we could go to deployment within a month. We do very rapid development.
Do all the companies that are sitting up on the panel, do you all have internal teams that create your training in-house, or do you contract it out? Because that's clearly a cost element that I'm trying to...
We use the hybrid model. So the basic heavy lifting, when you're talking about the requirement collection, taking the picture and the video, I use my team. And reach to that certain level, which looks like the product which we are trying to make it. Is that representable to the business? No, it's not. And then give it to the expert saying that, okay, now you need to do the final touching.
Right.
So in that way is a lot of cost saving, if that answers your question.
I think it depends on the skill set. So for example, my team can develop in Unity, which is a very popular 3D development tool
Yeah,
for prototyping, but we don't have anybody to turn it over to because we don't have teams that do that for production. So there are also tools you can get that you don't need to do the full development suite, and you can do more like PowerPoint content creation, which is more for what we'd call assisted reality, as opposed to really 3D, full-blown out augmented reality. But there are more and more tools in both mainly AR, but now in VR, where you can do a lot of content creation with some more basic skills that you don't need to have that level of programming skill to do.
And if I understood your concern correctly, is talk about the cost, right? You're more worried about the cost. So I think that is a very good question, and I think all we need to look from the different angle. Out there, like there are a lot of other great technologies out there, right? But the question to ask is, do I need the Ferrari to go to my office? No, I need a commuting car, right? So my professor, Professor Clayton from the Harvard, so he talks about most of the time is jobs to be done, right? That's the concept, the jobs to be done. So we need to keep in mind what the problem we are solving, and then start from the bottom up. Is that the problem can be solved just like having a video and putting on the screen? Oh no, we need a little bit more interaction. Okay, now can I do some kind of 360 video which can address my problem? Could be. Now go to the next level. Do I need a little bit more interaction? Do I need to immerse into this environment to get the real jobs to be done? Okay, now jumping to it, don't jump to the VR headset yet. Look at your smartphone. Can I replicate that to the smartphone? Okay, that has a limited potential to it. Now go to the VR headsets and start with a lot of these days getting into the $200. If you need really interaction or interactive one, then come with the controller. Otherwise, stick there and then jump to the interactive headsets with the controller, or if needed, like a surgeon training or interactive training, then get into the haptic gloves. So out there in the market, there is a lot of options, luckily, and platform which we are sitting in, the XR, it is a pretty mature, and even like the low cost development, now you can just simply drag and drop after the recording. You can just simply take into the solution that turns into the VR. In a day or in an hour, you can develop the VR solution. So that will cut your cost big time, and at the same time addressing your problem. So don't be attracted with the fancy wall out there, whatever the smart glasses you have. Just go the bottom up and try to address the problem.
Raj, can I jump on that really quick?
Please go ahead.
I just to end cap here really quick. I have a guy who is very passionate that we hired 3 years ago. He was an English teacher that had a computer science minor. And my company believes in innovation. We've done so since 1952 when our founders started this whole thing, right? We always told that everything we do, we can allow our people to fly. If they have an idea and they have a passion, let them fly, right? We invested in this guy to go out and essentially attend some seminars where he learned about Unity, which is our tool of choice, and learn about XAPI, which is the coding on the back end that we use to kind of track the learner activity, right? And learn about the LRS and all that good stuff. I would say by letting him use 20 to 25% of his time to dedicate himself to educate, to go watch YouTube videos, to come to conferences like this and connect with companies and learn from other people, he was able to, by himself, build a prototype solution, which is now the platform that we use for a lot of our AR and now VR solutions that we offer. So to us, that was a pretty negligible expense when you look at it. Because we're not talking about a highly paid engineer. This was a mid-tier instructional designer, right? That was given just the simple tools that we're used to, like Articulate Storyline, like Captivate. Then we got a Unity license, which is $1,500 a year, right? So we were able to do all of that, and then he learned what he needed to, and then slowly iterated to the point where we spent the $200 on the Oculus Go, and that was it. We didn't spend in the canvas of things a whole lot of money to develop a solution that is essentially changing the way that our business operates.
Yeah, thank you guys. So, I mean, That was a really, really good question. So just summarizing, and Raj, I really, really like the jobs to be done framework and starting with the problem. I think that's really the root of all of this. And I know it's very similar. We see, similar patterns where we are, that it's never prescriptive. The technology just isn't at that stage yet where it's just a blanket solution and something that's drag and drop. It's always non-prescriptive. It's really being rigorous and looking at the jobs to be done, looking at the problem. Like you mentioned earlier, Raj, as well, bringing in a group of stakeholders who understand the problem and then going through that from the bottom up to understand, in Randy's case, is this asset worth $2 or $4 million, or is it a less valuable asset that's more routine maintenance? And let's think through the whole solution from the bottom. So we have 3 minutes left. I want to end on a final note that I actually had multiple conversations with our panelists, which was around standards, compliance. This could be in safety, this could be in IT, and 3 of 4 of the gentlemen here actually brought this up as a challenge and something that's needed. So I want to open up the conversation around standards, be it for IT or for safety. And I think to try to create the most value for you as our audience, if you guys have anything that you implemented that kind of removed friction or unblocked a project, either as a standard or in IT or in safety, it'd be awesome if you could share that with our audience.
Go ahead. Okay, so I'll just start on the top down. We have 2 minutes, 50 seconds left. So when I say we as a IEEE, which is the world's largest technical association, and anything you see around here, the electronic, that the standard is created by IEEE, starting from the Wi-Fi to the television or to the chip, anything. All those are standards created by the IEEE. And we clearly see that the standardization of the processes and the equipment is the key, because not leaving on the assumption, whereas collecting the best knowledge and putting together and making a process, that is the standard in a generic term. So definitely, and that when it comes to the emerging technologies like XR, that become even more critical, because you see one company is implementing XR or AI, making millions of dollars, whereas another company is going bankrupt, right? What is the differentiator? Because because lack of the standards. Those implementers comes in, they implement the solution, what they think is the best. Maybe not the best out there, right? So certain the standards is very much needed across the industry. I'll take a pause in the interest of time, if other panelists want to add something.
That was really good.
So this is a discussion that we had. One of the issues in my industry is, we're an ANSI standards-driven safety organization, but the thing that we were talking about was we've created this virtual reality training simulator. It's extremely realistic. We use the actual controls overlaid by virtual controls, so they're actually manipulating the real controls. The question I have, though, is can we use that to train an operator completely? They would never actually be in the machine. They only train in the sim, and then they go out and do their job. And my initial feedback was no, I don't think that's a good thing. That the standard requires hands-on, but the industry is pushing back and saying because the VR training is so much better than what they actually receive, that certifying them in the VR is a good answer. And that remains to be seen. But here's the thing that I wanted to bring to this group is how realistic is that sim? Is there a way, do we have a standard measure by which we can look at VR or VR and say, is this high fidelity, medium, low, abstract, realistic? We need a way to grade these things and say, if we're going to use these in that fashion, they need to be this good, So that's something we need to figure out as an industry.
Absolutely.
And Lou, I know we are just over the time. Just a final comment and thought from my side. And just want to give one reference that called the Business Roundtable Consortium, which is the consortium of the CEOs and CIOs most powerful on this earth. They came up with the understanding saying that what are the top 3 things for the industry? So they came up with the 3 items, which is the first one was the value to the customer, right? Second thing they came up, now I'm not going in the sequence, but the second thing was the foster the diversity and inclusion. The third thing which they have highlighted is the most important thing was a training, right? And not the training, I call that as the upskilling and the reskilling, right? So that is the key aspects of it, no matter what industry you are in, what age you are in, but I think the reskilling and the upskilling is the key to thrive into this digital era. We talked about the machine era. Can we go run against it? No, run with it and use the greatest technologies like XR. Earlier world, the training and adopting the new technologies was so difficult, but use these tools, to sharpen your skill and stay in the workforce. And not only survival, change your mood from the survival to the thrival, right? You have to thrive with taking the advantage of these technologies. So keep upgrading and keep upskilling your talent. That's the bottom line I just want to close with.
That's a great point to end. So thank you guys for attending. Thanks to our panelists. We are going to hang out here or in the back.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, guys.